Happy to be joined by the head coach of Syndicate MMA and the man who's in the corner of Merab Dvalishvili, who just won the bantamweight title at UFC Noche, getting it done over Sean O'Malley. It is John Wood joining me here on the program. John, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you after such a monumental win. Now, obviously, going into the fight, you guys felt confident that Merab was going to get it done, but did you expect him to be that dominant in that performance?
I did, in the sense, I figured we would dominate that fight through, but I thought like what was going to happen would happen come later, round 2, 3, 4, 5. I knew we would have 3, 4, 5 in the books. And to be honest, like I told Merab, like, listen, take your time in the first round, get the feeling, and you start going when you get the timing of Sean. When you start to have the timing and you feel that you can see the shots coming and you see him and we make the reads, then you go when you want to go, and that's kind of how I train all my fighters. Is it's ultimately our job to put the information and the tools in the toolbox and for them to use it. So he just felt it, got out there, and after that first takedown, I was just like, oh man, this is gonna be an easy night.
Anything about Sean that surprised you in the fight that maybe you weren't expecting looking back?
Not really. Like he did everything that I thought he would do. Not very often does the game plan go exactly how it's supposed to. And that was one of those nights where it just, I knew how, like, the thing with Merab is people underestimate the fact that he's still getting better. Yeah. The fact that he's, like I said, I think he's at 50% of his capabilities. Striking, even grappling, wrestling. And if you've seen the evolution over the last 4 fights, he's getting better in all areas. His striking's getting better. His ground control. I think you're going to see a lot of finishes coming out of Merab here shortly. But it's just making the reads. Like Sean did everything we thought he would do, and for us, I always kind of game plan according to the guy is going to do what he thinks we're going to do. Sean is going to train on, what he's seen from Merab. And so in a fight like that, we just change things up. Like I think even Tim said it, we did a lot of different things that our timing was different. Our rhythms were different. And when you do those things and change it, it really throws the opponent off. And that's what happened. And I think, I was surprised how, I was a little surprised that he didn't adjust and how quickly we just kind of took control of the fight. And once Merab took control, he never let us foot off the gas. So it really wasn't, there wasn't anything surprising to me.
What's going through your head when Herb Dean immediately in the fight is like, hey, what's going, like the warning? What were you thinking as a coach? Are you like, oh man, I hope this doesn't throw him off or anything?
Yeah, like Merab's an emotional guy, and Tim obviously knew what he was doing there, and that's he's even stated that's part of his tactics of trying to like have a one up in the ring to help his fighter out, and good for him. It almost it worked for 5 seconds, but it was a little one of those things where it's like obviously Sean is a phenomenal fighter. He was champion for a reason. And so that's a guy you can't really take risks with. You can't sleep on him. You can't get those mental lapses. We had to fight the perfect fight to make sure that we got where we needed to go. And that was kind of, Merab almost having too much fun. And that kind of started it off where I was like, okay, we had to reel him back in. But yeah, you don't want to have those mental lapses, those mental areas in a fight that big with somebody that good who can put your lights out, So he wrapped it back in, pretty quick. He brought it back in, got his head back together, and went back to the game plan. And, it was just thankfully only a very short mental lapse for a moment and then right back to the game plan.
You've been in the game for a while. You've had a lot of great moments in your career as a coach. Where does this moment rank for you in terms of Merab winning the title?
Oh, man, it's got to be – it's top 3, if not, the top. There's a lot of big moments, but it's definitely in the top 3 as far as having somebody that, you legitimately helped get there. He's such a big part of our team the last couple of years. He's such a great guy. He works his ass off, and it's so good to be able to have an example like that of somebody that you can show the younger fighters and go, hey, if you do the things that you're supposed to do, this can happen. I mean, there's a lot of things that a lot of things that go into play in fighting, talent, being, having the talent to be a champion, having the work ethic to be a champion. But there's a lot of luck that usually comes into it, being in the right time, right place. But Merab literally did it the hardest path possible. The grinding, beat every number in front of him, took out every champ in front of him, took out everybody that was placed in front of him to get where he got. And he probably only was going to have one shot at making that happen. And he did. And that's like, there's no greater story, to be able to express to the other fighters. There's no greater, like the joy that I felt just for him was amazing in such a big stage and such a big, special event and sphere. Like that was like overwhelming itself, let alone just having that performance and being able to share that cage in that moment with him. It's definitely top 3, if not the top. It was amazing. I felt a lot of feelings, in that that lead up and the fight night. It's the first time I've ever, in 20 some years of doing this, it's the first time I've ever had any kind of like nerves in a good or a bad way. It was just different. It was crazy, like how much they hyped Sean up, and not a single person gave Merab a chance. Not a single person said, he's gonna win, and definitely nobody thought he would win in the fashion that he did. And so it was just special all the way around, man. It's something I'll never forget.
Now, you talked about Merab, and you're exactly right. Merab said one of the toughest roads to get to the title. I know as far as the next challenger for Merab, there's been some debate whether or not it should be Umar Nurmagomedov. Of course, he only has, I believe, one ranked win. I know Merab's not really a fan of that. As a coach, who do you believe is the number one contender? Who would you like to see fight Merab next if you could pick?
I mean, listen, I think Umar is going to have his moment. Obviously, I think his last name carries a little more weight than anybody else at this moment, and that's something I'm sure they would like to push. Do I think he's earned a title shot? No, not yet. I think, another fight or two, and obviously he's going to be the guy. I like the Deivsion Figueiredo fight. I like the fact that, it's a fight that Merab wants to have. He likes to have gone through and beaten all the former champions. It's something that is big on his record. So, I mean, I love that fight. I think that stylistically it's a great fight. I think it's an entertaining fight. Davidson's a stud, and he's been killing it since he's moved up to 35. So I really think that, I would love to see that fight. But, honestly, whatever the UFC tells Merab, he's going to do it. He's obviously not a guy that shies away from, any kind of adversity or toughness or people, and yeah, like I don't believe that Umar has earned that right yet to have that, to have a title shot that quickly. So, but ultimately we know how this business goes. It comes down to what the UFC wants.
Playing devil's advocate, though, some people would say that the Sandhagen win that Umar had is better than any of the wins that Davidson had. They were all ranked wins, obviously. He beat Garbrandt and Font and forget the other one who he beat. But either way, some people would say that Sandhagen is a bigger win than all that. What do you make of that argument as far as Umar getting the shot next?
I mean, you can argue anything you want anyway, and there's always a good point. There's a valid point on both sides. So I get it. I'm not saying I'm not saying he hasn't deservedly earned a shot, but like from that comparison, of course, there's anything that we can do in this sport of you can argue both sides of it. And ultimately, I feel like Merab more than anything has earned the right to at least call his shot at the moment. Yeah. He took out the golden boy. He's taken out every single person in front of him that was, all studs, a row of murderers and killers. So like for him, for me, I think that he's earned the right to say, hey, this is who I want to fight, and he should be able to go fight him. That's how I believe it. But, if we end up with Umar, I'm not saying that, oh my God, this is a, travesty or whatever. And I think we're going to fight him eventually either way, and I don't think it's a bad fight from Merab. So yeah. I'm fine with it. I just kind of going with more of what Merab wants and what Merab deserves.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm just keeping you on your toes here. If we had just,
Yeah,
it's all good. No, and by the way, that was Cheeto Vera. I don't know why I forgot that, but that was his last fight. I don't know how I forgot that one. The reason I bring up Umar as well is like we saw the interview with, I think it was Red Corner MMA, where Merab was asked about Umar and he walked out of the interview. It does seem like there's some, animosity towards Umar to a certain degree. And so that kind of brings me to my next question. If Umar is next, you got to sit Merab down and be like, look, you got to keep your emotions in check. Like, you can't worry too much about him or how he got this opportunity or whatever. Is that something you've thought of if that fight does get booked?
Nah, I don't think there's any animosity. I think that just, Merab had the biggest fight in his life in history of nothing's ever going to compare to what he just had. And people are continually asking him about a fight that's not even in existence yet.
Yeah.
So it was annoying, for him. That was a name that just keep coming up, and that's everybody just doing their job, trying to get the next tidbit and get ahead of the game and ahead of the curve. So I really don't think, obviously, like I said, I think Umar is hyped and deservedly so. He's a good fighter. He's a very good fighter, but does he deserve to be in those talks, especially right before Merab's even having to fight? That was the only thing that really annoyed Merab. I don't think there's any kind of animosity at all. And I think we know that our paths are going to line up, whether it's next fight or 3 fights down the road or 2 fights down the road. So I don't think there'll be any kind of worry of having to keep Merab focused on this one. And their camp's not like, it's different with O'Malley and Tim and those guys. That's a camp where they're in your face. They're talking shit. They're trying to play the mind games, and that's fine. They're more of the, like, hey, we're gonna try to get under your skin all the way up to in the fight. I don't see that happening from Umar's camp, and those are the kind of things. Like, Merab's just a respectful guy, and he likes to be respected and have that respect for his opponent and shared with them. So I don't think we'll have any kind of, there shouldn't be any kind of underlying animosity that I see.
When would you like Merab to have his first title defense? If you could pick, because obviously, fans are there. They want to see him get right back in there right away. But this was a long camp, I know. Just sort of thinking off the top of your head, when would you like that first title defense for him?
I want the guy to be able to take a break, dude. He literally trains just, 3 to 4 times a day. That's his deal. Like, he's constantly on the grind. This was a rough camp just with all the extra media, all the extra pressure, all this stuff. In rough camp, only from that. Like, it was a great camp. We had a phenomenal camp. Obviously, it's very well documented that he gets cut. He does all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
By the way, that cut didn't get busted back open. So.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And I'd like to be able to see him take a break, go home. I think he needs to go home to Georgia and live this up a little bit. He needs to enjoy the moment before he even starts to think about this. So, I mean, I think. I could see a January, February type deal being, something not too far out of the way. But I want him to be able to sit back and enjoy this. He's worked his entire life and worked hard to get this. I want him to go home and have his heroes welcome and enjoy his family for a little bit and just kind of sit back, soak in the moment, and then we'll get back to the drawing board.
Looking at a fight with Umar stylistically, there's a lot of similarities, but there's also some differences as well. Just, if that is next, how do you look at a fight with Umar and Merab?
I mean, obviously Umar is he's a difficult one to deal with. He's got good striking. He's obviously got an excellent ground game. There's not a lot of holes in his technical aspects. So that, just like the same thing with Sean, where you have to go back and kind of figure out how we create those holes, how we create moments and things that we can take advantage of. There's obviously things I've seen that I'm not going to, say now and how we're going to go out there to beat him. But there are things I've seen, and there are definitely a lot of paths to victory for Merab in that fight. And there's the one thing that people just don't understand and will not understand. You cannot mimic is Merab's pressure, Merab's gas tank, Merab, the fact that this guy's getting stronger every round is something that really will always carry through in most fights. Umar has kind of got that same thing, but I think there are some things that we can exploit in that area. it's going to be a tough fight. It's going to be a fun fight, but I think it's a fight that we win, no doubt. And I look forward to those kind of things. Those kind of fights are obviously the ones that get you going as a coach, that are like, okay, we got to find this, we got to find the area where we can succeed. And, growing with Merab over the last couple of years, is if we get the game plan, I know he'll be able to execute it. And there's no doubt in my mind that Merab could go out there and win that.
We're going to play a quick game of this or that. So I'm going to give you two names. You're going to pick the name you think makes more sense here. And we're going to talk about pound for pound, because there's a lot of debate on this. There's no wrong answers here, John. It's just a fun game. So don't feel like This is like taking a test or anything. John Jones and Conor. Here, let me start first. John Jones or Conor McGregor?
John Jones.
John Jones or George St. Pierre?
Oof. St. Pierre.
George St. Pierre or Anderson Silva?
St. Pierre.
George St. Pierre or Fedor Emelianenko?
St. Pierre.
George St. Pierre or Khabib Nurmagomedov?
Man, I'm going to still go with St. Pierre.
And last one, George St. Pierre or Demetrius Johnson?
GSP, baby.
Love it. You're winning my heart over here with the Canadian answers. I live in Vancouver, so big Canucks fan, by the way.
I mean, listen.
Yeah.
There's that guy, there's never an asterisk by his name. He lived like a champion, obviously. He did all the right things as a champion, defended against, multiple, studs, and just was just so dominant over the years. Like John Jones is always, I think, always going to be one of my favorite fighters. But, just St. Pierre is just he has such a great body of work. Was like the first really kind of like dominant MMA champion. So.
Yeah, completely agree with that. Just quickly, anyone else you got coming up? I know you have a big gym and there's a lot of fighters that are going to be competing soon, but any sort of notable names that you have competing that, because obviously it doesn't stop with Merab. You've got a lot of fighters that you got to coach.
Yeah, man. We're going to go the next big one 2 days after Khalil, obviously Khalil Roundtree being the next biggest one. We got the Cody Steele show again here. We had crazy thing on Contenders, and the guy quit in the back, and that kind of just screwed up our whole schedule for the next month, because I'm leaving to go to Khalil, so now I got to come back and we got to do all this stuff. And so we got Cody Steele going to go get that contract. I think it's looking like October 8th again on Contenders. And then man, we've got about, I think, 15 or 20 fights between now and November through the gym. So we got a lot of awesome young up and comers, dude. Like I'm so stoked and fortunate, and just like I couldn't be happier about where the gym is going. And then, the direction with all these young kids we've got. I think I've got a meeting with Wei Lee today to talk about what's going on with her. I think she's about to drop some big news on her next fight. So that'll be coming up. But yeah, man, it's just the train keeps rolling.
I've seen you at the Golden Knights games, because I know Daniel Rubenstein, and I've seen you at the games and stuff. Do you follow the team? Are you like a big fan, or you just go to games every once in a while?
Huge, yeah.
Huge fan. Okay, good to know. I mean, maybe we'll save this for another interview, but what do you think? Obviously, they lost a lot of names in the offseason, but people forget they got Noah Hannafin, and they're still going to be a threat in the West, I think. As a Canucks fan, I'm still worried.
So everybody was, hard on them that we didn't go out in free agency or at the end of the deadline and pick up a bunch of people. We did that during the year. We picked up a bunch of stuff in the year. So I don't think it's time to panic. Mm-hmm. And so far, like that front office hasn't shown me anything other than being successful in what they've done and knowing how to run that front end and how to run that team. So until it collapses and falls apart, dude, like we've got some stud players still. Jack Eichel's really coming into his own, and we've got just like you said, Hannafin and all these guys that we picked up over this last hurdle, and these guys we picked up this last year before the end of the year. I think we're going to be just fine. We did lose a lot of players that like hurt my heart a little bit. Obviously Marshall Salt, and was kind of the heart of the team, and Logan Thompson, who has actually been in the gym, and some guys who I thought was a really good young goalie. And we lost a couple of the the originals, but I think we're going to be okay, man. I still think we're a playoff team, and I think that we're not too far from getting back to a cup run.
You still have your arcade machines? This is something I've heard for a long time. I have a number of arcade machines as well, so you and I have that in common.
Absolutely. I got a full arcade in my house. If I was home right now, I'm in the gym, I would have it in the background. I've got about, I think, like 12 old school arcade machines that I love it. I love sitting there with my kid, playing the games that I grew up with him. So I'm a big video game nerd. Love it.
Same here. Street Fighter's my favorite game, hands down. Street Fighter 2. Do you have a favorite arcade game?
Man, right now I'm like hooked on Burger Time.
Oh, excellent choice.
It's one of those ones that I didn't really play as a kid that much, but like Burger Time is I'm just like obsessed with Burger Time right now. So
yeah, no, you can't go wrong with
Burger Time and the old school, the original Star Wars, arcade game, the TIE Fighter game. I've got that. I've got the actual original cabinet in my house, and I love that one too.
John, we went way over time. Thanks so much for doing this. We'll get into some other topics next time, but in the meantime, anything you want to mention before we get out of here? Social media, anything like that? Any gym information? I'll give you the last word.
Follow us at Syndicate MMA, at Syndicate MMA or at Bigwood MMA, and get ready to tune in to see the next world champion from this gym, Khalil Roundtree. He's going to do it.